Oh, Frank Krueger. Frank Krueger, welcome back to Emerge Conflict.
You say my name a lot, but I still don't know whether you can hear me.
Oh, I can hear you. You're good. You're good. Can you hear me?
Well, you know
That's
what I'm
important.
rocking. You know what I got?
What? No, you
A
didn't.
USB-C to USB-B cable. Oh my god. It's the highest tech.
Oh, you didn't even
It
install
is.
it yet.
Oh no, I bought two. Because who
Gotta have
knows?
a backup.
It was like $8 for one or $8 for two.
Oh,
Getting the two. One is none, baby. It is the jxmox.com. High quality digital cable. The
okay, okay.
17_303 model. Highly recommended as it seems to have passed its first test.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it worked. So you have this plugged into if you go back to dongle gate last
What
episode, is it plugged in direct or is it plugged into a dongle?
plugged in direct? And let's be clear, this is like a Thunderbolt 4 or 5 or 10 port running USB 2.0, I believe, is what this mixer runs. So I am wasting an entire Thunderbolt PCI channel on a USB dongle. Thanks, James.
You're
But
doing it right. You're doing
it's
the right thing.
reliable.
You're doing the right thing. You're doing it for the people, Frank, and that's what matters at the end of the day. The people have spoken. They need the USB cables directly plugged in, and it
Now,
worked. And I'm happy for you.
the question is, if this hadn't worked, would you have made me buy the $16 cable versus the vaguely $4 cable?
Here's here's the thing. It either works or well, no. I think
Quality
that
of the
like
cable.
quality of the cable does matter. However, a $4 of this cable is there. I think the quality of the cable is complicated when it comes to like I want high speed, high transfer. I want like quick charge, right? I actually found recently I bought a little wall brick that is, I don't know, 50 watt, 30 watt from Anchor, and then I bought a compatible, like I bought a very high end cable so I can get the transfer
Yeah,
speeds and
sure.
I can get the power quick charge. And what I found, it's USB-C, is that devices, like I have this little bicycle light that's USB chargeable, won't charge on that cable because it's like too good. The cable's too
What?
good. Yeah.
That's impossible. The cable's
No,
too good. Did
it's
you get
too
like a
good.
fiber optic cable?
No, it's just like a normal USB cable, but it's like the USB-C
Okay.
cable is like the high transfer stuff that whatever the port of that USB-C on that little $5
Weird.
little bicycle light is like, nah, fam. So it's weird.
I think the biggest problem is USB-C has negotiation. The beautiful thing about USB-A or like just the old USB standards was you could just count on, you can draw half an amp, guaranteed.
Yep.
If you wanted to do more, you had to negotiate. And then with USB-C, it became all chips talking to chips. So now we're in that wonderful world of,
Yeah.
these little pieces of hardware talking to each other, negotiating power levels.
Well, it'd be fascinating too because I saw that the new Oppo foldable, like they barely, the phone is so thin. It's a foldable phone, but so thin that the USB-C, like when you stick it in, it's like there's like barely a piece of metal there, basically. So like if the iPhone wanted to become thinner, it's actually restricted by the USB-C protocol. I mean, I guess they could make they could make a custom adapter. 'Cause I think the European law is like only one side of it has to be. I'm not sure which side has to be
Wow.
USB-C, but yeah.
Still plenty of room for, are we going to, I assume we're going to do an hour episode on the iPhone E, the new iPhone.
No, no, Frank, we're skipping it because I do want to talk about some iPhone stuff. But our good friend Pierce Bogan, Piebog, who worked with me as Xamarin for a long time, just put out a video about creating iOS applications with Swift and Swift UI inside of
Oh,
VS Code with GitHub Copilot and all the new fancy stuff that we were talking about. And I wanted to talk to you about a new iOS application that you just built and you just launched, called One Fairy Away. That should be its name, I think. It should be
is that right?
should be.
Okay.
I think so.
Wow.
I was talking with Heather. I was telling her about it. And she's like, "Oh, what did he name it?" And then I told her the name. And then she was like, "Oh, why isn't it called One Fairy Away?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm going to tell him you should rename
Okay.
it. Just rename it. It's a
Well,
better name."
I think I nailed the subtitle. Salish C schedules. You can't say it quickly. Say schedules.
Say those schedules. There you go. Say it 10 times fast. Say
um,
those schedules.
yeah. I wrote a little Swift app as alluded to in the last episode. I was inspired by you and your skiing app. I'm like, can I write an app that only 20 people will download? Yes, I can. And I
Yes.
chose to spend my time writing basically just a fun app that's useful to, let's say, maximum 20,000 people in the world. Probably a much smaller market, actually. But it's just a fairy schedule app. It's small, which is fun. And it's just one of those apps, I think, like, as app developers, especially if you're in my case, I'm always trying to build apps that I know people will buy and pay for because that's how I make my living. So I don't often spend the time to write apps for myself and for my friends and for my community. And so it
Yeah.
was fun to do that. I was a little jealous because you wrote a community app.
I think community hyper local is, what I like to call it. And, is really fun to do because it's something that's super personal to you and it's something that you want, which means you're going to keep it up to date. And I kid you not, Heather and I were at a winery a few days ago. That's not surprising. But what is surprising is they had like a little book for the ski area that we're by and like stuff to do in the area. So I'm like flipping through. It's like, oh, here's like food and here's shopping. It's like, here's how to get to the mountain. Here's like ski stuff. And like, oh, here's the cross country ski area. And then the first line, it's like, before you go anywhere, download the official app. And they're like, I was like, well, I'm like, that's me. I did that. Like, that's the
You're the
app.
official app.
Yeah, I'm the official app. And they're like raving all about it. So that's going to be you. Now, I think what's
No.
neat about your application is it not just shows a number like most of my apps, but your application is so small that it could fit inside of an app clip, Frank. And I also want to talk about that. I want to talk about your development. I want to talk about like all the things. It's a very impressive app. I downloaded. I don't need
Thanks.
the fairy system and Washtop, but like
No, never.
maybe if I come to visit you, I will. Which then
Yeah,
I'll download it. And it'll download
very
so
small
fast.
market.
It'll download so well. That's the thing about it. It's perfect because that super small community is super local and are going to super care about it because it's something that you think is very helpful for the specific purpose, right? It's like very specific, right? It's not like, oh, I'm going to download a generic like photo app that can like do 5 billion different manipulations. Like, yeah, it's specific to photos, but then it's like, oh no, this is specific to like inactivity, which is me getting from point A to point B.
Yeah, and it's fun to have. I wanted to say it has a very defined goal and purpose, and you can like build a UI and focus on that goal and purpose. But like all app developers, I went a little astray and added features here and there. But at least there was like vaguely a tight thing. Show schedules, let you know if you're going to catch the ferry or not. When's the next ferry? Those are the goals of an app like this. You want to present that information as clearly and simply and easily as possible. I did write in Swift. You alluded to that. Kind of a turn. I I probably should have made it cross-platform. If I was truly serving the community, I would have an Android version out there. So I guess I'm not a great community member, but any iOS people in the community will be able to use it. I'd just been doing a bunch of Swift with the Vision stuff, and I was getting a little good at it, but I hadn't done much networking stuff, like, making web requests, doing async stuff, caching, JSON, lots of JSON, modeling that JSON, all the stuff that's like nuts and bolts programming, but I just hadn't done too much in that language, and I'm always looking for learning opportunities, especially with a simple app like this. You can always make it like a fun learning opportunity, so it was a Swift learning opportunity for me.
Was everything in Xcode then, or like did you actually branch off to VS Code? Because like actually in the last few weeks, I didn't even realize you could do iOS app development in Swift, specifically in VS Code. And then I saw a bunch of people building apps and I was like, that's interesting. Like I didn't even know that. I mean, it makes sense. It's just calling command lines. Like if you can build a
Yeah,
C# iOS application inside of VS Code, of course
sure.
you could probably build a Swift one, but I didn't even know about the Swift integration or anything. Like, are you 100% only in Xcode? Did you branch out into other experiments and other worlds of IDEs? Like what was your jam?
No, the biggest experiment I did, and this is all thanks to you, I got Copilot installed in Xcode, which truly transforms Xcode, makes it usable.
Oh,
Because
cool.
although their IntelliSense has improved over the years, the Copilot is a major addition. Yeah, you can totally do stuff at the command line, but I think you and I both know one of the it's not even the hard part of mobile development, but the annoying, frustrating part is just all the like silly signing stuff and all that kind of stuff. And I just wanted to fully buy into the Apple ecosystem and just do everything on the gravy yellow brick road that they have paved and just try to do that because maintenance, basically. I don't want to have to worry about maintaining this app. If I want to add a feature or fix a bug, I want to open the code, fix the feature, hit the bug, push to my release branch, and then whatever, click a few buttons in the thing. So it was all about just streamlining that flow. Now, I don't want to say like it takes a whopping 30 minutes for me to set up a CI/CD for like signing apps and everything. So it's a terrible excuse, but I stayed in Xcode just because all that's built in, the core data and all that stuff. It's just kind of built in there and easy peasy if you stay on their little golden path.
Yeah, that makes sense. Talking about Copilot, actually, just last week, the week before, they announced GitHub Copilot chat for Xcode that you can get now.
Oh,
Like when your experience, you did code
yeah.
completions and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. Um, obviously that entire experience from start to bottom end. Like I think you said that you're using a lot of new pieces of technology. You have obviously it's an iOS app compared to like a Vision app, but also you
Mm-hmm.
have like the live feed thing, the island dynamic
Preview.
island preview, live
Oh,
preview.
oh,
No, like on the
no. Okay.
phone, you know
Well,
what I mean?
I've got
Like
live actions. Yeah.
live action. I was just thinking there's a lot of new APIs, like you're saying, like the web requests and this
Right.
and that. Like,
That
was
was
it stuff that you knew, or is it like, oh, like Copilot's just writing it for me?
No, I think that's what's so fun about these small apps is you can just experiment with the APIs. Now, I didn't do anything crazy so far. I put like any machine learning in it or anything like that. But I did want to use like some of the more modern features. So nowadays, the widget system has been so expanded.
Mm.
So with the dynamic island, as you mentioned, you can create these things called live activities. I believe that's their name. Uh, they're fascinating, James. You define them in Swift UI. It is an incredibly limited UI set. It is like button, progress bar, a label. Wait, did I say button? I need to explain how much work it is to make button work in these things. But anyway, when we stay at a high level, on the iPhone, you can put a little UI up on the little dynamic island. And if you have a power user, they might even know they can swipe down from that and expose a bigger UI. That's super cool. But even cooler than that, when they go to their lock screen, you can put a little widget there. I've known all this stuff. I've built lock screen widgets before, but it was fun to take advantage of all the APIs and get them all together because this is the kind of Apple envisioned for that. This is a live activity. There is a ferry departing at a certain time, and I can put a bunch of like interesting bits of notification up. Importantly, without running a server, I can just post this information.
That seems fancy. Yeah, I was going to ask, like, in general, how you're able to keep the app size so low because if you have these live activities, you got widget stuff, you got, yeah, in this application, right? There's like a lot of things that you were saying you can do. So I downloaded and tried it, and it's very nice. It's got light mode, it's got dark mode, it's got like little cute little fairy icons, and they're all different.
Thanks.
They're like whatever the fairy is, it's what the icon is. It's like really detailed, surprisingly. And I was like, okay, like there's some assets in here, and I know it's mostly data, but I'm like, you're making web
No assets.
requests. You got, yes. So it's like, what
Not
is
one
in this
asset.
app? There's nothing in it. There's just
Zero.
just code only.
Yeah, I set it as an obscene challenge to myself of hard code nothing. And so it is like the most restful REST app ever. I
Mm.
feel a little bit bad because I think I added caching. I honestly don't even know if I added caching. And I even already got a bug report from someone. It did fail
Ooh,
to load a screen once. But my goal was to just not hard code any data because maintenance, again, maintenance. I didn't
yeah.
want a route list Who knows if they're going to add a route or something like that? I didn't want a boat list. Who knows if they're going to add a boat? I didn't want a boat icons where I have to manually put them in. James, those icons took a bit of effort. Let me tell you. The icons that they'll serve up, if you know the right URLs to go to and if you fish around enough, they are not the highest quality icons. So I run a bunch of core image filters on it to turn them from janky JPEGs into very high resolution, background removed PNGs, basically transparent
Ooh,
images.
that's cool.
So even those assets are downloaded dynamically and processed dynamically, because I'm not an image editor. I'm not gonna sit and edit a photo, but I will write an algorithm to edit a photo. That I'm willing to do. And so it does all of that dynamically, downloads all the information it needs dynamically. And again, I set that as a little bit of a challenge to myself, because I wanted to practice my Swift concurrency stuff, which if anyone hasn't used Swift before but has used C#, they have the await keyword. And although the implementation is very different from the .NET C# implementation, in effect, it's the same. You put async in a function, all of a sudden it becomes asyncy, and it's viral, and they kind of spread out and all that stuff. And so I just wanted to practice data modeling in that world.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how did it feel to not only just do the async await stuff, but also the JSON stuff? Because I know that Apple like introduced a lot of JSON specific like classes that you can like inherit from, or whatever they call them. You know what I mean? Like to kind of help with that. Like, how did that go from using something like System Text JSON and like the HTTP client and like the things that we're like so used to for decades, like moving over? Like, was it a big hurdle?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I know you're Frank Krueger, but like, you can do anything. But like, in general, that was newer to you, at least as building real apps and all the concurrency
Yeah.
stuff too.
Yeah, and I'm an experienced programmer, so there's certain things I expect. I expect to be able to do an asynchronous web request. I expect to be able to process that data in the background in a safe kind of controlled environment, and then post notifications up to whoever should need that data. The kind of normal model you would implement. I have to say the Swift JSON model is pretty dang good. Forever, Objective-C has had the codable protocol. It's an informal protocol, but forever, if you've ever done like info plist programming or anything like that, in right now, today in .NET, if you inherit from NS object and implement the NS codable interface, you can be serialized with all the other crazy Apple objects out there. And the neat thing is they made codable very easy in Swift. It's really, you just put : codable and it auto generates all
Oh.
the mappings it needs to go from properties into code. Obviously, it's an auto-generated mapping. It's it doesn't even handle the things of, if your JSON is lowercase, but your property name is uppercase. It doesn't handle even basic things like that out of the box, but of course you can do all the overrides and everything. But I wanted the smooth, straight thing. So whenever a property name was ugly, I just kept it ugly, because I didn't even want to deal with any of the mapping stuff. So I would say, like, if you just name everything exactly like it's named in the JSON, life is pretty dang good there. Life is easy. Now in the web request world, Apple has a fantastic networking stack. I am still a fanboy. But goodness gracious, they have not nailed asynchronous networking yet.
Oh
It's
no.
still a little bit like continuation based, a little bit. It's so, I did my own little gross Frank stuff to turn their continuation style into async style, and it's just weird. Like, why don't they just have like a nice basic async style interface to it? Which, now that I'm saying this, if there's any pro Swift programmers out there, I'm sure they're yelling, in Swift 5.8, there's blah, blah, blah. It's hard
Or
to keep up with the
download this
language.
Cocoa Pod that will do all the things for
Yeah,
you in
exactly.
NS Networking EX. Yeah.
Right. But as you said, this was a small app. I just used the Apple APIs. I used very basic data types. I used very basic Swift UI views. Like, the code is small. It's a small app, and that's what I kind of love about it. I love these tight little things.
Well, I think what's fascinating about it is that I think when you go, like I just updated, like if you just update your apps today, let's say you go into the App Store, you pull the refresh, you have about 18 gigs to download. And that's like 4 apps, right? Like I think that
I
the DJI
downloaded.
app is like 1.4 gigs, I think.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna say I downloaded a cat app today, a free cat app, so I can't complain. Cannot complain. Except it was like 2.4 gigabytes.
Oh my
I'm like, all you do is draw lines and select vertices. How does that need to be 2.4 gigabytes? Anyway, you're just a
everything's
bunch of math.
it's huge. I mean, like that, if you have if you have a 32 or 64 gig phone, like I do have a 64 gig, like I think like more than half of it is just apps. And that's like, I don't have that many
Yeah,
apps either. So if people have a lot of games or like that, huge. So
yeah.
what are they
And
doing?
and and
Is it, go ahead, go ahead.
I want to be clear. I wasn't worried about size. Like
Yeah.
I could have just downloaded all that data, made a snapshot of it, and baked it into the app. No problem, really. Um, I just didn't do that. Maybe I even should, so I can serve something even though there's no information. But these schedules only last for a few months. And so even that baked in data would be obsolete after just a few months if I don't update the app in a few months.
Yeah.
So I wasn't concerned about file size, but it is funny when you just call raw OS functions and nothing else, your app is kind of small.
Yeah. It's like, what are these other apps doing that you didn't do? Is it just that they're using like tons of like SDKs and tons of
Yeah.
like is it analytics packages? Is it crash report? Like how does it get so big? Like how do you get your app that's
Well,
like not doing that much to be ginormous? Like I don't understand like how
I think
your
we're
app is like
sounding like
super
we'll met with.
fast, super fast, super good, right? I know
Yeah.
it's not like Snapchat or something, you know what I mean? That has like
Yeah, it
I have a
doesn't have that
thousand
much
filters.
UI.
But still, you know what I mean? It's not like I don't know.
I mean, obviously, it does come down to assets at some level because images are just ginormous compared to executables.
Mm,
But there's other reasons. Sorry, just I shouldn't be ragging on this cat app, but I'm just going to talk about this cat app because I was just experiencing it. It's a Python app, but it's a Mac app. So they shipped the Python executable in it, and they did a
mm.
great job. They packaged it all up in a .app, just like they should. So you don't even know it's a Python app unless,
Yeah.
I mean, you look at it and you're like, oh, that's a Python app. But the excuse I wanted to give there is, well, they have to include Python, but Python's like 20 meg.
Yeah.
So that's not 2 point something gigabytes. What that has to be is Python libraries and assets that come with the libraries. But I cannot comprehend why it's that
It's
big.
like I wonder if because like even for me, some people will be like, oh, .NET MAUI apps or Xamarin apps at the time they're like big, and I was like, dude, my cycling app is like 20 megs. Like it's not that big.
Oh
Like
yeah,
yeah, that is technically 10 times bigger than your app, but historically that is very small in general, right? And like I do have some assets and I have things in there. But I'm curious, like, I wonder if it's a linker thing because obviously continuous is huge because that's to ship like all the
hmm
frameworks and all the things.
yeah,
Like, I do wonder if it's just like, oh, all of these like analytics and metrics and all the stuff. They're
right.
like, to get everything, you can't link out anything. You just got to leave it all in there.
And now I shouldn't be ragging on Python, but now I'll rag on Python. They don't have a compiler, so they can't do linking. Just period,
Uh,
full stop. You have to include everything. If you
uh,
include a library, you're getting every single piece of that library.
uh,
Because who knows? It's a dynamic language. Who knows? Who knows what may call into that library? So they cannot do linking. And I remember, geez, in the early Xamarin days, I think the Hello World app was like 4 megabytes. It was less probably. Like they had really gotten the linking very aggressive, and they'd gotten that AOT compiler very aggressive. And I think even today, like what's the smallest iOS MAUI app? I bet you it's not even that big.
no, I don't think so. I don't think it's that big. It can't be.
Yeah. Speaking of which, sorry, whole side tangent here. There's a nice pull request on SQLite.net for native AOT trimming support.
Ooh,
So,
nice.
apropos of our discussion, linking things out, trimming them out, support these compile languages because I don't know. Are we just going to have to download 2 gigabyte fairy apps in the future?
Sounds like it. Well, I'm very impressed with your application. How is it going so far? It's been a few weeks. Like, are you did your system of trying to, I know you didn't try to make it small, but try to not to include everything, all the stuff, like how's it working out? Like, are you using it? Are people using it? Like, do you have no metrics in it? So do you know
No metrics.
anything? Do you know
Nothing.
anything about your application? I don't either, by the way. Do you know? But I guess the App Store, which is like terrible metrics.
You get crash reports and a few
Yeah, there
other
you go.
little things. I think you get device reports for
Oh, how
the
how are the
sales.
how are the crash reports in a native Swift app compared to, like, the
Um. Okay, I'll say the crash reports themselves are pretty good, because one of the frustrating things with Xamarin and now .NET apps is sometimes you won't always get symbols.
yeah
But if you're on the Apple Golden Path, they make sure symbols get uploaded, get correlated, all that kind of stuff. So you do at least get a stack trace. Whether a stack trace is enough, like you don't get console output, which is often what you want, because if you're like me, you're dumping a whole bunch of junk to the console, and that would help
yeah
like diagnosing what's going on with the crash. Um, I love the Swift programming. The language is okay. I love the Swift programming world because it has the previews. I call it UI driven development. Like, if I'm working on an algorithm, I just build a UI for it and I have fun. It's really great for that. But what it's really bad at is debugging. It is the world's worst debugger on the planet. And so when you say, how is the crash report and all that, I'm like, the crash reports are great. Debugging is atrocious.
Oh no. Is it an
It just
IDE
doesn't.
thing, or is it just a debugger thing, or is it like,
It's a
what's the way?
debugger thing. It's
Uh,
maybe a little bit of a language thing, but .NET apps are just lousy in metadata. Lousy in a good way. They have so much metadata. Everything is at any breakpoint, it can query all the type info of any object. There is not one stray pointer it has to care about.
yeah.
And that debugger can just give you all that information very quickly. The LDB debugger that Xcode uses, the opposite of that. Everything I just said, just take the opposite. It has no information and it's slow. It's both worlds. I apologize to whoever works on that debugger. Just rewrite it. Do something. Copy. The Mono debugger was based on the Java debugger. They're very simple protocols. Just include that metadata. Anyway,
People
yeah, debugging is
underestimate the
pains.
debugging. The .NET debugging is real good. It's just real good.
I've had good debuggers my whole development career.
Yeah.
It's really hard to go back using a 1970s debugger. It's just
Yeah.
not wonderful.
When it comes to the CI/CD part, is it just using GitHub Actions, or did you use Xcode Cloud, or like did you, because you
I
usually
used
kind of go.
Sorry, yeah, I used Xcode Cloud. Just mostly because I didn't want to insert my certificates into. I think we did a whole episode on complaining
Yeah.
about inserting our certificates in CI/CD, mostly just for that. But again, the Yellow Brick Road, Gravy Path, all the
Did it work
metaphors.
well? Like, how was it? Did it do all the
I
things,
like Xcode
basically?
Cloud.
Yeah.
Every so often, it'll just get stuck and you'll start a 28-minute build and you're like, what's going on, Mr. Build? But that's honestly very rare. So I don't even know who servers they're using or what, but they've had pretty dang reliable servers in my case. I have no idea how much I'm paying for it, if I'm paying for it. Apple's very not clear on any of that.
It's
Maybe
up
it's all
there. It's over
free.
there.
The
Yeah,
cloud provides. I
it's
don't
over
know.
there somewhere.
They are aggressive, like they delete builds after like 30 days and all that stuff, but it's fine. No big
That's
deal.
pretty good.
So I enjoyed that. Now, you did bring up app clips. Can I tell you a funny story?
Yeah.
So I did realize at some point, I'm like, this app's pretty small. And I'm like, this could totally fit in an app clip. So I'm like, I should make an app clip. And then I'm like, does anyone in the world know what an app clip is?
Frank, I used one the other day. I kid you not. This was the best use case for it. I was parking a car. Where did we have the car? Was it in Canada where we're at? It might have been.
I like this. I like this where you're going.
We're parking a car. It was either in Canada or it was in Seattle or something like that. And I needed to pay for it.
Yeah.
And it
I
said,
hate this part.
download
There's
the
a
app.
1-800 number.
And then it said download. There was like a 1-800 number, insert, but there was no insert your credit card or something like that. For some reason,
Mhm.
like it was like you have a thing or pay by phone. And I was like, I don't want to download an app. In fact, I have apps. I can't download apps on cellular because I'm on like the Mint Mobile plan. Has like I can turn it on, but I have it off right by default. I get 5 gigs
Okay.
a month. I'm not going to download your 18 gig app
All
to
right.
pay for parking. But then on the right hand side, right next to it, was like, or try our app clip. And I was like,
Ooh.
oh, let me try an app clip. And if people don't know, app clips are tiny, itty bitty bitty apps that are basically supposed to do like one little piece of functionality and then make you install the main app. But here's what was cool is I scanned the QR code, it popped up, and it pre-filled the information with the parking area. I did Apple Pay, done. It was
Great.
seamless. It was 30 seconds, and I think it was like less than a meg or whatever. It was two screens. Pay for parking, you did it. Done. And that was it. You know what I mean? And that was it. And I didn't,
Yeah,
and then I could delete it when I was done. I was like, cool, I'm done.
yeah, you have to imagine like I forget what the size limit is on these app clips, but like it's just a file sitting on a server and it's like the size of a JPEG. So it's just how fast can you download a JPEG? You can get this app running on your phone. I think it's the most clever delivery mechanism. And once I realized my app actually was small enough for it, I totally wanted to do it. Now, here's where I went wrong. I asked a friend, um, what do you think of this idea where I could just show a QR code and then you don't even have to download the app? You can just QR code it and then the app magically appears. And like, that's a silly idea. So I listened to a friend, but um, part of this is me just practicing and learning. So I
Yeah.
absolutely am going to implement an app clip. It just didn't make it into version 1, but 100% because I just want to know like what UI is presented. I personally haven't gotten to use too many app clips. I think I got to use one once, basically in the same circumstance as you.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so I
I
really want
think
to
you
try it.
can, and I think you can pipe data to it too. So like I think that like through
I can
that
make web
QR code,
requests.
well, I think no, I think like what I'm saying is like through the QR code, I think you could
Oh
be
yeah,
like, let's say that you're in Bainbridge and let's
right.
say Frank slaps a app stip clip, sticker
Illegally,
illegally. But like you could say, oh, here's the Bainbridge. It could automatically default and open up the Bainbridge routes because you know where you're at. You know what I
100%.
mean?
That's
Yeah.
exactly how I would do it. Yeah, I don't know how much data you're allowed to pass to it, but literally, if they let me send 1 byte, I can do it. So I will
Yeah.
make that work. Yeah, I think that's what's kind of fun about just having a small app and getting to play with all those technologies because iCircuit's not really an activity centric. It is activity, you're doing something, but it's not like a ticking clock kind of activity. So I don't get to
Yeah.
play with these kinds of fun UIs. Whereas with this one, I do.
And I'm very interested too. Like, is it a separate app? Is it something else? Like, I
Oh,
is it a subclass of it? Because I know that there's like certain frameworks and
it's a
APIs that
separate app.
work. It's a separate app. So you build a new
It's a
app
separate
as an
binary.
app clip. Wow.
It might have the same bundle ID. I don't exactly recall that, but
Hmm.
it's not like, as far as I know, it's not an extension sitting inside the app as other things get shipped like that. Oh, by the way, I didn't get to complain about buttons enough in the live
Okay.
activity.
Yeah. Go
James, quick
on.
side tangent. You can set a 1 minute timer. I'll say this as quickly as I can. Adding buttons to live activities is hard and a lot of work and hard to think about and hard to implement. All of the above. And it's poorly documented. So, in order to have buttons in your UI, you declare a button. That button has to fire off like an intent like thing. In the Android world, it'd be called an intent. I think even in the iOS world, it's called an intent. But you have to register your app for those intents. And most intents get run in a subprocess of your app. But
Mm.
live activity ones get run in the real process of your app.
Ooh,
And
I
it's
like
very
that.
tricky what things are allowed to run and what things aren't allowed to run at different
Yeah.
times. Because you may want to share your widgets with, say, the lock screen. And the protocols are different between those two. But you can still put a little button on the lock screen. So for the
Ah,
first time, I have added interactivity through an app on the lock screen of my
I
phone.
like that.
It's
Wow.
just a button, but it's just the beginning, man. I think I'm gonna build, I don't know, like some kind of game that's just a lock screen game.
Once you have a button, the world is it now?
Hmm.
If you could have, can you only have one button? Could you have, because if you had multiple buttons, then you could build like a
Right. Well,
Tamagotchi.
so it's all if you've ever programmed a complication or something, it's very similar to that. So when you create one of these UIs, there's two types of data: static data, which you only get to submit once, and then the dynamic data. The
Mm.
dynamic data, when you click a button, you activate your intent thing or whatever, and it's allowed to update the dynamic data. So if you can formulate your app idea in a TikTok cycle like that, where you show data, the user presses a button, you show some data, the user presses your button, you could totally build a full UI in
I
lock
like
screen.
it. Yeah, I would like that because like mostly what people see is kind of what's similar to yours. It's like people are probably used to like Uber or Lyft, but it's like your
Hmm.
car. It's like just it's like literally a
Yeah.
car on the line because it's easy to update a distance or percentage, which is similar to like what you did. But there's also usually some
Well,
interaction, which is cool.
and that's the thing. There's no concept of time. So you don't get to draw the screen. So you
Hmm.
can't actually do any live updates. The only time it's updated is when its dynamic data is updated. So it's very, for instance, I can't just have a timer that's moving a little boat across the screen. I would love to do that, but you just can't. The only dynamic controls they have are if you pass a date object to the label control, it'll render it dynamically. So it'll
Mm.
automatically update the actual time and date. If you have a progress bar, it'll dynamically update that under certain circumstances. So it's a little bit frustrating for doing like animations or doing anything dynamic or doing like a dynamic web request or anything that you would want to do on a timer. But there's apps out there that you can write that don't need any of that.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I think the cool part is that traditionally, where you wouldn't expect UI, where there's a will, there's a
Yeah.
way. I mean, you literally did
Yeah.
build like an entire game, like on the very first Apple Watch UI, Spacey or whatever. Like it was, like
Yeah.
it shouldn't have been possible, and then like it happened. Like I have a
Basically, they
coffee.
gave me buttons and a way to draw something. I'm like, good
Now,
enough.
what more do you need? I literally have like a coffee machine, right? Like from Fellow, the Aiden, and on the Aiden, and also on their kettles too. You can insert like if there's only one UI element, which is a turn dial. It clicks and it turns left and right. It's circular,
Love it. Yeah.
and literally,
Classic.
if you enter like a up down Y type of thing, you know what I mean, like a Konami code, it will with certain things. Heather did it. It will launch a game, like a full
Oh,
space
I love
game,
it.
shooter game,
Oh
which
my
doesn't make
God.
any sense. But it's like
I love it.
where there's a button, and you can draw pixels. There is a way to put something on it. Will it run Doom? I don't know, but anything is possible. Now, if you can get
Uh,
Doom
That was
inside of,
no, you just reminded me of the. I love Easter eggs.
dude,
And especially a small app like this, the settings screen deserves a little video game. Something fairy related. I just couldn't decide exactly what it was, but like navigate the fairies around the islands or something like that.
yeah, that'd be cute.
So next time I'm bored and I want to spend a day wasting time, I'm totally putting a mini game in the about screen.
No, I love it. I'm excited to see it progress and see like kind of other things in the world that you use because like I'm assuming you're not using like any Cocoa Pods or anything like that. Really, just using like core APIs right now, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't think it has any dependencies. Sometimes I have my own little libraries that I take my own dependencies on.
yeah. I'm excited to see as you expand it out, like expanding in that Swift world. Because like I know, obviously the Visual Studio and VS Code world so good, but I'm also interested if you were to open this in VS Code, put on agent mode, do some multi-file editing. Like
Yeah.
I'm curious how it will
What
go.
features does the AI think it needs?
Exactly. You tell it what you want it to do, and it'll do it. But I'm curious because it's a pretty full fledged application, like in your language, like and how you're coding it, like how it will do. So I've been really deep recently in the GitHub Copilot experience. I would say like is a lot of very fascinating stuff coming out everywhere, including Xcode and obviously VS Code and Visual Studio. But yeah, I'm curious how it will work for something like you because yeah, just someone like you,
It,
Frank. That's all.
It works. It works. It works. The AIs and I, we get along fine.
There you go. Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, let us know if you have any favorite Cocoa Pods for Frank to check out. You can go to youtube.com/at merge conflict FM. That is where you can find me and Frank. If you are interested about Copilot stuff, you can check it out on my YouTube at James Montemagno. Video is so good, even Satya Nadella decided to tweet at me that he loved my videos, Frank. Yeah, so check that out.
I
It's
missed that little
humble
bragging. There was
brag.
nothing humble about that. That was pure brag.
Your brag. It was a great way to start off the weekend.
That's awesome.
And you can go to mergeconflict.fm. There's a place to follow. If you like this podcast, recommend it to a friend. Go there. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/@mergeconflictfm, which you can find in the show notes as well. You get episodes early and sometimes bonus sneak peeks as well. That's going to do it for this Merge Conflict. So until next time, happy sailing.
Bon voyage.
Peace.